either the either or the either. I told you we're out of Phoenix Down. Okay, alright.
Hi, you're listening to Magecast, the ensemble podcast by the well-read mage and a cast of mages. Each episode, I sit down with my rotating panel of guests to have some civil discourse about a single game. We're a group of games writers dedicated to long-form content and critique. You can find us on WordPress at thewellreadmage.com, on Twitter at thewellreadmage, and on YouTube. Crowdfunding support makes projects like Magecast possible. If you enjoy our work, written or otherwise, you can check out our Patreon campaign at patreon.com/thewellreadmage for more information on exclusives, rewards, and our vision for a future of better games writing and a friendlier gaming community. Links are in the description. Don't forget to like, follow, subscribe, and share Magecast with your fellow adventurers. Leave us a review, too. Oh, and now let's start the show. Hey, welcome to Magecast. This is the well-read mage, aka Moses the Hammer Norton. Today we're going to be talking about an exceptional cult classic. What I would consider the definition of a cult classic. It is a game that's very near and dear to so many hearts. But to introduce that game, I've first got to introduce two very special guests that I have joining me today. It's kind of funny because sometimes I'll start this podcast before the recording by doing like a joke, like this is jazz radio, like, good morning and welcome to TWRM Jazz. And today we're going to be talking to Coffee and Jazz Incarnate, which is actually pretty cool. So I think doubly cool because we've got both of you guys. We have the Hyperactive Coffee Mage and also the ABXY Mage. So we'll have you guys introduce yourselves. Hyper, if you want to go first.
Oh, yeah, sure, for sure. So my name is Ryan. I am the Hyperactive Coffee Mage. And for everyone's information, yes, I just drank 20 ounces of coffee just now, just before starting. So I am lit.
He's lit. I've never heard lit used in the context of coffee drinking, but...
You're going to hear it a lot from me, buddy.
Okay. How much coffee do you drink on average?
If I had to put it into cups, probably about 8.
That's a lot of cups.
Yeah, well...
Throughout the whole day or just in the morning?
Oh, 6 cups in the morning, and then if I'm really feeling antsy, maybe another 2 in the afternoon.
Dang. I used to do that, and I felt like I was flying. But... more appropriately to this video game themed podcast, what are you playing right now?
So in bed, I'm playing Octopath Traveler because that's the only time I'm able to get any of the game in. And I just recently started playing Final Fantasy VII on the PS4. And
oh, nice.
Yeah, it's so different from what I remembered. I mean, the graphics and everything are the same, but a lot of the mechanics have changed, and I'm just really surprised at it. So yeah.
Huh. That's cool. I've tried to play Octopath Traveler in bed, and I've fallen asleep like a half a dozen times. I don't ever fall asleep playing video games, but that game is so beautiful and so relaxing that just I'm out.
The music alone is just so phenomenal.
Yeah, very good. Well,
so relaxing.
Yeah, we'll have to do an Octopath episode eventually.
Oh, you know it.
Yeah, once we actually complete this thing. So
I'm already pretty much done the game as it is, so anytime you want to start, I can go and start.
Oh, nice. I've only... I think I've got Ulbrich left to recruit, and I've only done the first chapters for each character. So I've got a ways to go still. But yeah, so my next guest is... none other than the ABXY Mage, if you'd like to introduce yourself, sir.
Yeah, my name is Brent. I am the ABXY Mage. And I just happened to be listening to Miles Davis when you asked me if I was interested in recording this today.
Nice. Yes, I was listening to some of that this morning as well when I was writing down the notes for this podcast. So thank you for that music, sir. You are a music fan, wouldn't you say?
I would.
What's some of your favorite music?
Certainly jazz is the top. I listen to jazz more than anything else. More specifically, bop-related subgenres of jazz.
Oh, yeah.
I also like soul, rock and roll, typical stuff, I guess.
Okay. Well, good. And I always appreciate you sharing the jazz on Twitter. That brightens my dark days. Okay, and so Brent, what games are you playing right now?
I'm currently playing Tomb Raider 2.
Oh, how's that going?
Just dandy. That's my daily chore.
Now remember,
That's for
Now remember too, I'd mentioned to you guys, let's not use any language on this podcast, but gently, in the kindest tones, how would you describe your experience thus far?
Slightly better than my experience with the first one, but almost unnoticeably.
Ah, wow.
you're doing this, Brent. You're doing this for Jonesy's what's it called, collaboration thing, right?
Yep, that is correct.
Yeah. How's progress on that?
Well, I had never played any of the Tomb Raider games before when I signed up for that. So I recently played the first Tomb Raider for the original PlayStation a couple months ago. Wrote a review for that on the Well-Read Mage. Now I'm playing the second Tomb Raider on my Mac. I'm about halfway through it right now. I already know exactly what I want to say about it, so once I'm done, I anticipate the article taking 1, maybe 2 days to complete.
Nice. I love those articles that go real quick, that just flow from your fingertips. With fury or with passion, doesn't matter. It's just great. But today, gentlemen, we're going to be talking about EarthBound. Today's episode is entitled Fuzzy Pickles. I thought that would be appropriate, considering it's like
Fuzzy Pickles.
yeah, maybe the most iconic line from the game, in a game that's pretty dang iconic. So EarthBound was released in 1994, developed by Ape and HAL Laboratory, published, of course, by Nintendo. It's also known as Mother 2, part of the Mother series. We'll probably touch a little bit on the Mother series later on. But I wanted to open up by talking about our personal experiences with this game. Right off the bat, and to get to some of the questions we got on Twitter. And this, you know how some people's names on Twitter, I'm like, I don't know how to pronounce this because it has numbers in it. I'm just going to say Steve31 or 3L Gaming asked, when and how did you first hear about EarthBound? So maybe if one of you guys wants to talk about their first experience with this game. Do you remember when you got it? Do you remember when you first played it?
I'll start first. Why not? So for me, me and my brother and I, we first got introduced to the game through Smash Bros. Oddly enough, because Ness was one of the extra characters in the game, and we're like, wait, who is this Ness character? I've never heard of him before. My brother asked me, he's like, I don't know either. So we looked it up. Discovered that he is from this game called EarthBound, and we both ended up emulating it. I know, very illegal, but we both ended up emulating it, and we played the game. And to be honest, he's played it a lot more than I have. So, but yeah, we both went through the story. We both went through it, and we're just like, wow, this is really real. This is completely unreal. Far beyond any other game that we've both played, and we're both hardcore RPG enthusiasts. And yeah, it was just such a bizarre but such a fun game at the same time too.
Yeah.
And incredibly disturbing, like especially at the end. And we'll go into that later, but man,
yes,
that end.
Yeah, it is pretty disturbing, and they make a lot of disturbing games now. But for the mid '90s, especially for the 16-bit era, you're like, this game is nightmare fuel at some points.
Some points.
Yeah. Well, and we'll get to that too. But so obviously, we're referring to the last boss fight. But
Yes.
Another really disturbing part was when I don't want to say his name because it's so hilarious, and I was going to make a joke later. But the martial arts kid, when he's meditating and his instructor like appears to him as an apparition and like removes his ears and his legs and all this stuff, and I was just like, it's text only, so it's not like you're seeing it happen, but like dismembering somebody in a vision is pretty disturbing. But what about you, ABXY? Your first experiences?
My cousin actually got the game for Christmas. I had never heard of it, and I was good friends with him. I used to go over to his house all the time and was hooked immediately. I can remember staying up literally all night playing, getting through the department store.
Yeah, it's a hard game to put down, especially at some points. But for me, I've still got my original cartridge here. I don't remember when I got it. My childhood is kind of a blur at some points, but I remember it was probably a gift because I remember playing it and being disappointed at first because it's not set in a medieval high fantasy land. It's not Final Fantasy. It's not Breath of Fire. It's not Dragon Quest, Dragon Warrior. It's not Soul Blazer or Illusion of Gaia. It's none of those things. It's
so you'd already played all of those games before?
Not all of those games, no. I knew a lot of them by reputation, though. I knew Dragon Quest even back then by reputation from a lot of friends. I had a lot of Japanese friends growing up, so they were playing some of the Japanese-only games. And I was very envious because I could not read Japanese. I tried to by going to the library, borrowing some books to learn Japanese, and after 5 minutes, I'm like, forget it. That's too hard for 10 or 12-year-old or 15-year-old me, however old I was at the time. But so I like how this is kind of bridging into our next subject, where we want to talk about the context of EarthBound set into the broader scale of JRPGs, especially in the time. I would say even since EarthBound still remains a fairly unique, very unique RPG, JRPG especially. So I listed off a couple of things: Final Fantasy, Breath of Fire, Dragon Quest, Soul Blazer was a game I liked at the time, around about the 90s, and EarthBound, then, you start it and you're like, whoa, this is a kid in, some weird parody of America. It's just very real life. So what are some distinctives for EarthBound when you think about it that make it stand apart from the wider context of JRPGs?
Well, definitely that it takes place in a more modern setting, like you mentioned. It wasn't in the typical castle, knights, wizards type setting. You mentioned that maybe was a reason that it was disappointing for you at first, but I think when I played EarthBound the first time, Final Fantasy IV might have been the only other RPG I had played. Mm-hmm. So even though I did have a preference for the, swords and sorcerers style of RPG, I wasn't that accustomed to it.
Yeah. Do you feel that's still a barrier for people today, trying to go back and play some retro games? EarthBound doesn't necessarily, if they haven't played it before, doesn't necessarily jump out at you because of its real world setting?
I wouldn't think so. I would say, especially with how popular certain games like the Persona games have gotten. I know that's not a real world setting, but, it's closer, obviously, parts of it in certain games. But I think people would be more accepting of that now. I don't think people are so tied to the medieval theme for RPGs anymore.
Yeah, we have Skyrim now. Hugely popular. But, like you pointed out, I like that. I haven't thought of that. You have games like Persona. Is Yakuza? I don't know why that popped in my head. Is Yakuza an RPG?
I think it's more of an action. Isn't it more of an action RPG? Or like an action game with some slight RPG elements into it? I'm not sure.
I don't know.
I haven't really played that one.
Yeah. But the point being, there are more diverse experiences in games today.
Like Pokemon's a good example, I guess. Pokemon's considered an RPG, right? And that takes place in a more modern inspired setting, certainly.
Right, exactly. Now, that is a good point.
Even if you look at Final Fantasy X as well too, it's it's fairly futuristic, of course, yes, but it has it has less of the fantasy medieval type of elements and more of the futuristic hypertech kind of elements. Even Final Fantasy VII too.
I was just gonna say Final Fantasy as a series kind of transitioned from the medieval theme into more modern, industrialized settings.
Yeah. I think, I wonder if we're kind of coming full circle, and this is not a Final Fantasy podcast, but it's just a fascinating subject. But I wonder if we're coming full circle, because Final Fantasy, nobody can argue, started off very high fantasy. And then when you get to 7 and 6, it sort of takes on this quasi-science fantasy, steampunkish sort of a thing. 9 is sort of a send-off to the high fantasy era. But then, like you said, 10 is very futuristic. 13 even more so. With the MMOs, I think, being more of a throwback to the high fantasy as well. But then 15, Final Fantasy 15 is very much real world with some futuristic elements.
You drive a car and it flies. What's more real world futuristic?
Yeah.
Even the flight mechanics are realistic.
Yeah. Even your friends are realistically depressing. Anyways, so I have to take a shot. This is going to be a running gag. I have to take a shot of that game every single episode. Another distinctive for EarthBound that I really adore about this game is its humor and its wit. This is probably one of the funniest games I've ever played. Without sort of being a dad joke kind of a game. You know what I mean? Like a lot of games, if they're going to use humor, it'll be like dad jokes, and you're just like, that's like remotely funny. But
lame.
Yeah, but EarthBound has things that are so surreal, like the pencil eraser. You remember that?
Yeah, very, very vaguely.
You're walking through.
So weird.
Yeah, you're walking through a forest, and you literally walk up to a giant silver pencil that's blocking your way, and it says something like, "For some reason, there's a giant statue of a pencil blocking your way," and you're like, "Okay, so in order to erase that pencil, you need a pencil eraser item." But then later on, you find an eraser that's blocking your way, so you need an eraser. And yeah, I was just like, how did they even, like, where does that thought come from to do stuff like that?
Magic tarts?
Yeah, I guess. But yeah, so I've always found this a very witty game. And that's one of its strengths, I think. What do you guys think about that?
I totally agree. The humor is just so dry and so cutting, and just I'm thinking about it right now as we're speaking, and I'm resisting the urge to crack up every single time. I mean, my brother and I have running jokes about this game to this day. It's I'm sorry. It's just too funny, especially the rampant drug use. I just find it just so. I mean, it's really bad in the sense that kids don't do drugs, and again, kids don't do drugs. But it's just in the context of the game, it's just too funny.
Well, like there's
a dog really, really high.
There's a dog right outside of the drugstore, that has like these crazy wide eyes, and it's just like, hey, you got to go get you some. and you're like, what am I playing? Yeah, it's a bizarre game in that sense. Another thing that just popped in my head, you guys remember in 1-et, the first town that you start the game off in, there was a house, like a shack that you could buy next to this cliff, and you had to save up. You remember that? Yeah. Okay. Yeah. You want to explain that for me, so I'm not talking so much?
No, not really.
Okay. All right. There, you twisted my arm. I'll do it. So, there's that house on a. Oh, what's that?
I'll support you.
Okay, thanks. There's that house on a cliff, and it's super expensive, right? I can't remember off the top of my head how much money it cost, but it was super expensive. And you're just like, yeah, this is like a vacation home next to the ocean and all these things. And then you finally save up enough money to buy it, and you go inside, and it's literally just like a rundown shack where the whole back of the house is gone. And it's just like the view is incredible, but like there's no back wall. It's just trashed with like a dumpy bed inside. And it's like the game is laughing at you because you're sort of, I mean, that's like an RPG thing. Like, oh, you got optional content you could save up all this money for. And then you do. But in this game, it's just a joke, you know? And you're like, well, I spent all that money for nothing.
Is it also only accessible up until a certain point?
Ooh, I don't remember that. I don't know. That's a good question for the internet.
Yes,
so,
it is. I wish I could remember.
Nah, I don't remember particularly. And I know, too, I only did that once in all the multiple playthroughs that I've done. Because, you know,
well, why would you do it a second time?
Yeah, exactly. Why do it more than once?
That's actually new. I never knew about that one, to be honest. The fact that you can buy a shack in 1-et.
It's something crazy, like 75,000 or something like that.
Yeah, it was a lot of money. I mean, you couldn't get it right at the beginning of the game. It was a joke that you had to come back to appreciate. I don't remember if there was anything in it that was at all remotely valuable, but maybe. Who knows? Another distinctive from this game is it uses psychic powers instead of magic. All right, so what are some other distinctives for EarthBound?
I think it addresses religion in a very interesting way. I know religion makes a lot of appearances, especially in JRPGs, be it through temples or churches or priests when they games that have job classes. But EarthBound has, for one, a cult that brainwashes people. Happy Happy Village, one of my favorite parts of the game.
Right, that's a pretty unforgettable part of the game.
And then it also, you know, in the final battle, prayer plays a big part in the final battle. Yes.
So, spoilers territory, but come on, this game's been out for multiple decades now. So go ahead and explain that, if you would, that final confrontation, how praying sort of vanquishes the foe.
I mean, that's exactly it. Your battle moves that you've used throughout the entire game are useless against the final boss. And it's only Paula's power of prayer that finally ends up weakening the enemy enough for you to be able to defeat it.
And it breaks the fourth wall, too, right? It is, she calls out to all these NPCs. And then lastly, she calls out to you, the player. And that's a striking moment, too, that I remember pretty consistently. Just being like, whoa, me? It knows I'm playing the game? When I was young, I wasn't too familiar with like fourth wall breaking stuff. So I thought that was pretty amazing. So, yeah, it was definitely something that I didn't expect.
Well, there were other parts earlier in the game that broke the fourth wall too. There's an NPC somewhere else that says something about sitting around playing Nintendo games all day.
Right. Ooh, was that Apple Kid? Maybe?
I don't remember.
There's a lot of lovable NPCs, but we'll get to that in a minute. What I want to talk about next is sort of just an overhead view of the story. Generally speaking, we're not going to be able to get into every detail. This is quite a long game. But Ryan, Hyper, Coffee, Mage, I was wondering if you would start us off on that. Brent and I will kind of help you out. And we'll see how far we can kind of get in through the story. Again, very overhead, very, very much just touching on the main points of the game, if you would.
Oh, sure, for sure. Hold on a second. In a world. So, okay, seriously. So the game starts off with Ness, the main character, in his room. All of a sudden, a meteor strikes nearby his home in Onet, in the American-esque land of Eagle Land. So he goes out to investigate and suddenly runs into his next-door neighbor, this kid named Pokey.
Pokey, what a memorable character.
Yes. Oh, yes. Well, yeah. Again, we'll be talking more about him soon enough. But so he meets Pokey. Pokey tells him that he can't find his brother, whose name is Picky. Very strange names for kids. Pokey, Picky. Anyways, so they investigate. They go up, investigate the meteor, and they encounter a strange bee-like creature who tells them that he's apparently from the future, in which an alien life form has enslaved the entire planet. So he travels back into time with the hopes to, prevent that from happening. So from there, they travel back to Ness's house, where they encounter one of the strange aliens' minions, a Starman, a very staple character in the EarthBound, in the Mother series.
Yeah, and on the cover of the game as well. Yes,
and on the cover of the game as well. So they defeat so Ness and the bee, whose name is Buzz Buzz. Thanks, little bro, for reminding me. So Ness and Buzz Buzz defeat the Starman, and the little bee dude tells Ness that, I think it's all up to you. You're gonna have to save the world. Oh, and fun fact: the bee apparently dies by Piggy's mom swatting it with a fly swatter, which is a very hilarious way to take out someone so powerful. Because at that point in the game, it was very, very, very powerful. But yeah, so Buzz Buzz gives Ness an item called the Soundstone and instructs him to go to 8 sanctuaries around the world and record 8 melodies, to which Ness would use to defeat the ultimate enemy, whose name is I think the pronunciation is Gygus.
Yeah, I can't help you with that
right?
officially. I've always said Gigas because I'm lazy to pronounce Gygus. How'd you say it, Brent?
Gygus.
Gygus. So I'm the odd man out on that one.
Yeah.
Odd man out on that one. So, right. So going on to the story, Ness goes around the land, goes around each of the towns, encounters a sanctuary here. At one point, he ends up in the Happy Village, ABXY's favorite place, and meets one of the first characters, Paula, who shares his, psychokinetic psi energy powers. So going through there, they, I think, was it in 3 side? Where there were zombies,
right?
Or
Threed,
some sort of undead thing.
Threed, yeah.
Or Threed, not Threed.
So they go from Onet to Tucson, and then they go to which is in Arizona, Tucson. And then they go to, that was a joke, guys, come on. And then they go to Threed, right? And that was where the zombies were.
Yep. And then they get captured, and then somehow, I think is it where that place where Paula prays, and then Jeff, the scientist, Dr. Andronicus' son, is that how you say it? Dr. Andronicus?
I don't remember his dad's name now, but he was in Winters, right?
Yeah. He hears their prayers, comes all the way to Threed, busts them out, and from there they continue the story.
Mm-hmm.
Then let's see. So from Threed they go to Fourside. Is it Fourside?
Fourside, I'm pretty sure.
That's after they go through the desert.
Yeah, I said 3 sided. I was thinking, yeah, they have to go to the desert, right?
Yes, and they go through the desert. Yeah.
Dry desert, is that what it's called?
Yeah. With some of the best NPCs in the whole game. Gosh, what were their names? It was
The Runaway Five, right?
Pincho. No, the 3 guys, the 3 slot machine guys, Pincho, Poncho, and Thomas Jefferson.
Oh, yeah,
Right?
I remember
Oh, yeah.
that.
Yeah, I think that was their names. I was just like, that's brilliance right there. Like you talk to the first brother and he's like, I'm Big Brother Poncho, and talk to the second guy, I'm Little Brother Pincho. And you're like, well, the third guy's name is Poncho, and then it's like Thomas Jefferson. And you're like, that's funny. That's really funny. Because humor is all about subverting expectations. And that's the entire game of EarthBound, is subverting expectations.
Exactly.
You remember there's that one side quest in the desert where you have to find that contact?
Yes. Find somebody's contact lens in the desert. Yeah.
Oh, that's like finding a needle in a haystack.
Yes, exactly. Proverbially. So they get to Fourside. There's that sort of illusory world, right, that they go to, Moonside, where everybody talks weird.
Yeah.
That's after you meet the statue the first time, right?
Yes.
No, you meet it the first time in Happy Village.
Okay.
Oh, yeah,
Right.
yeah.
Yeah, what was the name of that statue?
Is it the Manny statue?
Hey, I think so. I should probably get Wikipedia back out.
I'm getting it out right now.
I don't think it's going to have it in there anymore.
MANI, maybe?
I don't know. But anyway, regardless, from there, apparently they go to my favorite place in the entire game, which is the resort village of Summers. I grew up next to the beach, so that was a very special place for me. After that, they meet the 4th character. Do you remember who that was?
Pooh.
Pooh! How
Of
could
course.
anybody forget? My favorite. I just love Pooh. Pooh is so awesome. He's the martial arts kid. Yeah, Pooh. Just get out of your system.
Get out of
Ryan.
your system.
Ryan, get out of your system. Pooh. There you go.
All right. Okay, I'm good.
Is he also a kid?
I always assumed he was. He was a prince, right?
Yeah, he's a prince.
Of Dalam.
Yeah.
Yeah, I assumed he was a kid.
One thing I want to touch back. There is another important area that we kind of skipped over, and that's the Saturn Village, where they meet the Mr. Saturns. That's a little bit. I think that's right before they head to Summers. So like in between.
Has there ever been anything as iconic as Mr. Saturn?
Yep. Boing.
Yeah. No. Yeah. Mr. Saturn is pretty bizarre.
They have their own unique fonts and everything too.
Yeah. No, that was pretty mind-boggling.
Yeah.
So, the 4 of them are united.
Mm-hmm.
They go to Dalam, right? And then from there, you kind of hit another big desert, right? Scaraba.
Oh,
Yes.
Yeah.
The Egyptian thing where the pyramid.
Yeah, with the pyramid
Right.
and everything.
Yeah.
And the giant guy in the huge stone man. I can't remember the names of all these things.
The guy who is the maze.
Yes, that was bizarre too.
Yeah.
And then after that, you hit the deep darkness swamp. You go through the Tenda village, and then I think that about wraps up like sort of the exploring the world kind of a thing.
Right.
I mean, you hit like the prehistoric area where it's really zoomed out and you fight giant dinosaurs, but that's taking you pretty near the end of the game.
Right.
So what happens? So because this is, again, it's an overview. It's okay to gloss. So what happens in the end? How do they have to confront Gygus?
Well, so again, the entire premise of the game is to go around to each of these 8 sanctuaries and record the melodies. So at the very final sanctuary, which is I think it's a volcano in that same dinosaur area, right? The sound zone gets filled up, and then Ness goes unconscious, and he enters a realm within his mind called Magican. And from there, like again, I think Magicant is a pretty staple area in the EarthBound series. I think it was also in Mother 1. And then
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
I actually hate that area.
I think it is.
Yeah.
I hate that place so bad. It was so hard. The fights in there are really hard.
Yeah, they're ridiculous.
Yeah.
It's really confusing too.
It is, yeah.
Well,
and if I mean, you're just solo Ness. If you're not leveled up, have fun with that. That's a hard area.
Yeah, but if you're not leveled up there, by the time you're done with it, oof, it's insane what happens actually in that mindscape, because this is all happening in Ness's head, right? So he goes through Magicant, goes from this bizarre, nice, like light looking area where everything is nice and fun, and then it subtly transitions into a more darker, more sinister environment. And then right when he gets to the end, he meets a statue that looks exactly like I think it was the Mai statue. That's what it was called, right? The one on Fourth side, and that represents all of Ness's darkness. So you end up having a boss fight with that, and then after that fight, then you I kind of like liken it to thinking. I think about Dragon Ball Z when I think about this, like when you like ascend from Super Saiyan to like Super Saiyan 2, it's like in that moment Ness ascended in his power. So like he gains all these massive stat bonuses because, by absorbing all the power from the Sound Stone, and then he gains a whopping 400,000 experience points or something like that.
Yeah,
and levels up like crazy. So at the end of that, he becomes insanely overpowered, and that particular moment that Gygas decides to strike. So you might want to fill me in on what happens after that, because I know what happens, but I don't know what happens between that and the next part, which I really don't like talking about sometimes because I just find it so disturbing.
Well, the only thing I remember after that was they have to go to the future, right, to confront Gygas?
Yes.
But in order to travel through time, they have to shed their physical bodies. So they have their consciousnesses downloaded into robots, right?
Yeah, and to me, that part always seems to be... I always seem to be really creeped out at that part, because...
It is creepy. That's why. I mean, you've played as children the entire game, and then it's like, oh, by the way, now we have to stick your minds into, like, metal bodies, and you're like, what? There is nothing in this game that's cliche.
No, not at all.
You know? Yeah. I mean, that's
for sure.
That's not a normal, like, end to an RPG.
No.
So then they go and they confront Pokey, who has become sort of this, like, corrupted servant of Gygas. And then they confront Gygas himself, which has become so powerful under his own psychic abilities that he's become sort of like, what is it? Not self-aware or not like intelligent anymore. Like it's just like a force now, almost.
It's almost like, you know that movie Akira? It's like that.
Yeah, I don't want to talk about it. Akira is horrible. Akira is such a disturbing film.
Yeah.
But you're right. It is kind of like the ending of Akira.
Yeah.
What a horrible movie.
And now I have scarred Red Mage's mind.
Yeah, I know. I remember when I first watched that movie with a friend who brought it over, and I was like, hey, let's eat breakfast while we watch it. And he was like, you probably don't want to eat anything while you watch this movie. I was like, okay. And then when we saw the ending, I was like, I feel like I need to throw up. Like, that was super gross.
Yeah, fun fact. I had to put on happy music after that.
Afterwards?
Then, yeah.
Yeah, that is, yeah.
It's
nasty.
Yeah.
But
anyways.
So you fight Gygas in this like swirling void, and it looks like a screaming face. And, you know, it's like, it's got all that famously cryptic dialogue, like it hurts and all this stuff as you're fighting it, and you're like, yeah, it's very disturbing, especially for a game about children, you know, that starts in like idyllic American suburb, and then all of a sudden it ends like, yeah, pretty crazily. And Brent already described, you know, how you eventually defeat Gygas. So Okay, so apparently that final fight with Gygas and the dialogue specifically that Gygas utters, a lot of people know this, but it was based on the director Itoi's recollections of a traumatic scene from a film that he accidentally watched by walking into the wrong theater as a kid, called The Military Policeman and the Dismembered Beauty, which was a 1957 black and white Japanese horror film. And yeah, that's pretty disturbing to put that experience into your game. But I think it makes for an extremely memorable last boss fight.
Quite genius.
Yeah.
It's a genius move.
So themes in EarthBound. What are some themes that you guys would think about? To me, when I think of EarthBound, I think of it as sort of the death of innocence, in the sense of, well, in all those things we talked about, you know, the children having to shed their physical bodies at the end of the game, and then throughout the game, Gygas's influence is exerted on all these innocent individuals, and they become the enemies that you fight. So you have, you know, like all these warped inanimate objects and then human beings that act in bizarre ways. But what about you guys? What do you think?
Well, like you were saying about them shedding their physical bodies, what's interesting about that, like you were saying, the loss of innocence, they specifically have to shed their bodies in order to travel to the future where they will no longer be children.
Oh, that's interesting. Yeah.
It also starts off right at the beginning of the game. You at that beginning, basically prologue of the game, going up to investigate the meteor, you've got your household dog with you for protection, and your mom feeds you dinner, and you sleep in your bed. But very quickly you leave home. You're on your own. It doesn't matter that you're 8 or 10 or however old Ness is supposed to be.
Mm-hmm.
You're out on your own.
It's almost like a coming-of-age story, in a sense, then. Not typically how you would think of coming-of-age stories.
Very not typically like you would think.
Yeah. Because, again, there's not much cliche, there's not much typical about EarthBound. So, of the characters, now we know that the main 4 playable characters, Ness, Paula, Jeff, and Pooh. Did you guys have a favorite out of those 4?
I'd say Ness. Ness has always been a favorite of mine. Probably also because of Smash Bros. 2. My brother makes Ness all the time as one of his 4 staple characters. But I mean, to me, Ness is a very, very memorable character because he just goes through all of this, you know, all this hardship, and he's just so determined, you know. I mean, of course, we're as a playable character, you know, we're going through this with him. We're going through this journey and experience with him. But when you look at it from his perspective and you think about it, you know, it's like you're up against this unstoppable, like, impossible being to comprehend, and you're just soldiering forward, just going to each of the sanctuaries, trying to, you know, recording the melodies. It's, you know, it's empowering to see that. Mm-hmm. Like just from a kid, never mind, you know, it just makes you think, you know, kids are capable of a lot of things. They're capable of understanding a lot. And we as adults, you know, tend to what is that word? Just underestimate them, you know. So that's kind of how I see Ness as an underestimated kid with psychic abilities who's out to save the world.
What about you, Brent? Excuse me, my voice cracked. What about you, Brent? Did you have a favorite character, playable?
Ness was actually always my favorite too. The main character, the one that you live through the most, the one you most likely connect to the most, or at least I did. Side note, he's also one of my top Smash characters.
Oh.
Okay, so those are playable characters. For me, probably Jeff was my favorite. I loved that he could use the bottle rockets, and I loved that he was a nerd. Because I got called a nerd a lot when I was a kid. Didn't wear glasses back then, but there you are. Though, in a sense, even just as important as the playable characters in EarthBound are the NPCs, the non-playable characters. This game has incredible NPCs. It's almost like in modern games, this is going to make me sound like an old fart, but in modern games, it's like they've forgotten how to make memorable NPCs. In a couple of the big RPGs that I played that came out last year, a year before, NPCs are just shells for side quests. They're not there to be quirky or unique or have their own personalities. Everybody's just kind of like, oh, this happened to me, so please give me this item and you'll get some experience. But this game, you've got some of the names I wrote down were like Ness's dad, Pokey, we already talked about, Mr. Saturn, Everdread, the Runaway Five, Orange Kid and Apple Kid, the three amigos in the desert, Pincho, Pancho, and Thomas Jefferson. There's a buttload of There's a buttload of iTunes is like, hey, clean. A ton of NPCs in this game. Do you guys have any favorites? And so NPCs includes, boss fights, anything like that.
I have several. I mean, it's a great game. It's hard to say. There's so many. You mentioned Everdread is one of my favorites. I always liked, is it Frank that you fight at the arcade?
Yeah, I forgot about him.
And the sharks.
Yep.
And then, of course, I love the Happy Villagers, the entire cult, the Blue Cow.
Yeah. Totally forgot about the Blue Cow.
Yeah.
There's a guy in Moonside who has one of my favorite quotes in any game ever. He says, "I have no patience when people interrupt me when I'm busy doing nothing."
I remember that dude. He looked like Mr. T, right?
Yes, he was one of those guys.
I pity the fool.
Yeah. There's some hilarious dialogue. Like the dialogue in the cafe in Summers, where it's like a bunch of hipsters just with like a rock on the stage doing nothing. And they're just talking about like how great postmodernist art is and stuff like that. It was like, this is hilarious. As a kid, I didn't get it, but playing it again as an adult, like, this is a really funny game.
No, I was going to say, this is a game that you have to play as an adult to really, really get the humor. Because like,
it's one of those Nintendo games that, like everybody thinks Nintendo is for kids.
Exactly.
You play EarthBound. EarthBound has a lot of great subtext that's not like raunchily adult, but like adult in you have to have a level of experience personally to be able to appreciate,
Exactly.
There's also a character in one of the hotels, I can't remember which one it is, and if you talk to them over and over and over again, they just give you money to leave them alone.
That's great. That'd be cool if it worked like that in real life. That'd be
Although, like when you think about it, if you were an adult and you had a bunch of kids talking to you over and over and over again, you're just like, here, just take the money and go. Can you just like leave me alone?
Yeah, paying kids. If I had money to pay random kids, I would probably do that. I remember the police officers being funny.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, Buzz was definitely a funny character, like you talked about earlier, funny. Ryan. Yeah, there's just okay, so this just popped in my head. The two sunbathers in Scaraba who are just lying in the desert sunbathing. And when you talk to them, they're like, people always think we're dead bodies, but we're just sunbathing. And it's like, why is this in this game? Like, this is taking up data on what was at the time, like, especially by today's standards, like not a huge amount of file space. But yeah, this game devotes a lot of space to stuff that's just funny for the sake of being funny, All right, so we did get one question about NPCs. This is from Armando Garcia, who is actually the Black Humor Mage. There are people who think that the Black Humor Mage and myself are the same person, but this should be proof. Yeah. This should be proof, at least to you, Brent, that we're not. I don't know, maybe. But the question was...
You could have emailed yourself this question.
Oh, darn it. I could have. You're right. I don't know how to prove it to you. The question was, what is your favorite NPC interaction? So I know we talked a lot about NPCs right now. I'm just going to say again, the three brothers in the desert is just great. Just their names. Doesn't even matter about anything else. If you could play this game just for that, do it.
I'm gonna say the just staying in the entire Mr. Saturn village. They're just so bizarre and so out there, but it's just so fun.
Yeah, nah, that is great. You remember when they drink the coffee and they have like that weird hallucination?
Yeah, yeah.
That's some good coffee. Is that what it's like drinking 8 cups of coffee?
No, not really. Actually, here's a funny thing. I have a giant mug on my desk at work. I think that fits about. I think that's a 20-gallon mug or something like that. I have filled it only twice to the brim with coffee. And those 2 times, I swore to myself I would never do that again because A, it was too much coffee, and B, I was just like, what?
Then it feels like you hit Super Saiyan, huh?
Yeah, pretty much.
What about you, Brent? Favorite NPC interaction?
Boy, I'm not sure. I mentioned some. So I guess some that I didn't mention are, I like a lot of the interactions you have with non-enemy NPCs in Threed when it's overrun with zombies and ghosts.
Yes.
There's a lot of funny stuff in there. I like at the very beginning just going from door to door to the different houses and knocking and seeing what the different unseen NPCs from inside say when you're not allowed to go into the house.
Yeah, I totally forgot about that. That was a nice touch. Instead of just, you can't enter this house, you got a little dialogue. So to talk a little bit about more sort of the presentation of the game, visuals and music. I'm going to touch briefly on the visuals. How would you describe the visuals? Because I feel like that's one of the main barriers for people who hadn't played this game before. It's different.
It's certainly very retro in its presentation, but I mean, it's very colorful, it's very bright, and it's also very fun. I'm not really sure how to describe the visuals except for the fact that it's just there's so much fun, there's so much vibrancy in it. Sure, yeah, it's to me, when I first played it, I thought, is this really a 16-bit game? It looks kind of 8-bit, right?
Yes.
I was just like, it's really, really bizarre. But once you get into it and you see, and you kind of like experience the visuals yourself, like, wow, it's like, wow, it's actually very vivid. It's like, it's just wonderful to watch.
Like the battle backgrounds, like the psychedelic colors and lights changing in the background. Yeah. But that's a good point. It does sort of feel like an 8-bit game visually sometimes. Especially, I mean, compare this game to Final Fantasy VI, which is gorgeous as a 16-bit game. And then you've got EarthBound, which is kind of flat a little bit. But it has, I feel like it has a subtext of dynamism that's, write that down, subtext of dynamism for all you nerds out there. But it's got a special, I think we would call it charm or magic, but those are very like vague terms, Yeah. Not like subtext of dynamism isn't a vague term, but
it's vague but hipster.
Yes, it is. Yeah, and you can't talk about this game without being hipster. It's a cult classic. Come on. How would you describe the visuals, Brent?
I would agree with that. I think that some parts of the game do look better than other parts, though. I don't know if flat's the word, but. But I remember parts of, like, in winters, the snowy trees look really good, and the metropolis of Fourside, and the weird alternate Moonside. Some of that does look better than certain other parts of the game that don't look so great. But there also are... The different worlds are vastly different from each other once you get past those first few towns.
No, I agree with that. I think, too, it's instantly recognizable. If you saw a screenshot of EarthBound and you've played it, you would automatically know what game it's from. If you saw a screenshot of EarthBound and you'd never played it, you wouldn't mistake it for a game you've played. See what I mean?
I would agree with that.
Yeah, it's instantly unique. In an article I was reading, they were talking about how it's even set from a unique perspective. It's not completely top-down like a lot of RPGs were. And it's not, completely sort of side-scrolling two-dimensional like, say, Super Mario Brothers 3 was. But it's almost at like this weird half angle.
It's like an isometric view, right?
Almost,
not
yeah.
Quite.
Not quite.
Yeah.
It's like
It's
like in the middle almost.
It's like if an isometric view was flat.
Yes, yes. And there's no perspective in the game. Say, like, as things get further away, they don't get smaller, but it looks as if you're looking down an avenue. So yeah, it's a unique set of visuals, especially the fight sprites are really unique. Some of the boss sprites, like, I think I'll forever be tormented mentally by the giant killer mole that looks super like menacing. It's just like a thumb with like an angry, like, bloody face on it. There's some creeptastic stuff in here.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
I think we haven't mentioned Belch yet, one of the most iconic.
I was going to say, what is his name? He looks like a pile of puke or something like that, right?
Was it Lord Belch?
Yes.
Master Belch.
Lord Belch or
Right.
Master Belch, yes. Oh,
Yeah.
man.
That's a nasty boss fight. It's basically just a big pile of puke that keeps burping.
Yep.
Yeah. Do not eat and watch Akira, and do not eat and play EarthBound.
Especially after Sanctuary 3.
Yeah. Exactly. So next we're on to music, and I know that this soundtrack is so widely beloved for good reason. It is, just like its visuals, just like its themes and its setting, it's very unique, especially for the context of JRPGs at the time. They were very high adventure, symphonic in their approaches. And for this subject of music, I've enlisted the ABXY Mage, who, as we've heard at the beginning of this podcast, is a music fan. To put it very mildly.
Yes, very mildly.
Yeah, I think he's a little more than a music fan. But so tell us about the soundtrack.
Well, the first thing I would say about it is it's massive. There are... it's hard to count how many songs in it, how many tracks. I think on Wikipedia, I read that the soundtrack takes up a third of the entire game.
Whoa.
Wow. That is a lot.
Yeah.
Considering how big this game already is.
Yeah, exactly. So obviously there's a lot on there. It's a wide range. We mentioned the Runaway Five earlier, who their songs are bluesy, jazzy, soul-type songs. Then you've got Venus, who sings in Fourside or Moonside. I don't remember which one now. Which is very jazzy. She does a jazzy type song, and then there's rock and roll inspired songs. There's very, very strange rock hippie type music during some of the battles. One of the interesting things that I found out fairly recently, actually, while I was writing my Metroid review, is that the composer of the original Metroid for NES was one of the co-composers for Mother 1 and 2, EarthBound.
I didn't know that.
Which is very interesting because I think that the Metroid soundtrack is overall fairly unlistenable.
You're talking about the original
the
NES
original
game, right?
NES Metroid, yes. Even inside the context of the game, it's not great. And I love the music from EarthBound.
On genres, I know there's a lot in here.
Yeah, I read that they were all of the composers were highly influenced by John Lennon during they're writing for the game, which is why there are several Beatles references in the game and little in-jokes. A yellow submarine in the maze pyramid.
Yes. Yeah, you're right.
And one of the NPCs at the beginning, when you knock on their door, asks you a Beatles trivia question about yesterday. I wish I could remember that part better. Even as a kid, that made me laugh.
Yeah, I think that one probably went completely over my head as a kid.
It was like, XXX today, do you know the answer? And then you could say yes or no.
Oh, yesterday. That's, yeah, sort of witty brilliance that this game exhibits. There's one of my favorite songs on this soundtrack, Humoresque of a Little Dog, that plays in the grocery stores. Sort of like a banjo.
Yep.
Very upbeat banjo-y. That song always kind of reminded me of like bluegrass or something folky compared to the rest of the
kind of song you'd associate with a drugstore.
Yeah, sort of, right? Like a country drugstore, you know?
You know, it's funny, earlier when Ryan was talking about the game being retro, the first thing I thought was not in terms of graphics, it was in terms of setting. The towns feel very kind of 1970s maybe, before there was too much technology. Each town is very unique from each other. Yeah.
No, it does feel like a sort of idyllic was what I said earlier, but trying to find another word for it. But like a picturesque, sort of the vision of what America was like, and like a nostalgia for classic America. But I think I would probably place it around the same time, 70s, especially with all the drug references again. So.
Yeah, okay. Pausing here. Don't mind me if I'm like randomly dancing at this point right now, because I'm going through the entire soundtrack in my head and I'm like, urge to whistle rising.
Oh, yeah. It's a great soundtrack. And then so I feel like we've touched on a lot of the genres and influences, except for the stuff that you encounter in the battles. There is some bizarre battle music. How would you categorize some of that, Brent?
It's hard. I mean, several of the songs, especially some of the Sanctuary boss battles, they use a weird, I don't know, almost they break the beat with sound effects that almost sound like they're errors or like the track is skipping. Mm-hmm. But it works really well. So it's a weird mix of like kind of rock, sometimes prog rock, sometimes blues, sometimes rock and roll, sometimes dance or whatever you call that kind of music, house, EDM, whatever it's called these days.
Yeah. You know, one of my favorite other tracks is when you fight the Sanctuary Guardian the first time, and it's that giant ant in Onette, and it has that boom, 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 boom,
yeah,
boom, 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 and it's such a memorable beat. I put it on some months ago, and my children obviously had never heard it before, 3 and 1, but they started dancing to it right away because it's such a great like toe tapping beat. And I love that about classic retro game music, for when they used boss music that got you sort of this exterior energy. You don't really get that all the time now because so much music is orchestrated and broader and cinematic, I think is the term that I want to use. Whereas this is melodic and very it loops quicker, so it's more memorable, things like that. One
of the battle songs is basically just Johnny Be Good.
Right? Oh, that was with Frank, wasn't it?
Yeah, I think so.
Anything else to add on the music?
It has some great, even though there aren't any love scenes in EarthBound of any kind, it has some great love songs, I think.
What are some examples? Because actually I'm with you on there are no love scenes in the game.
Well, there's a song, I think it's called Because I Love You, I think. That's one of my favorite ones.
Man, I've got to revisit this soundtrack more often. I don't even remember that. Maybe I could play that on my anniversary or something.
To YouTube it is then.
let's talk a couple final questions. We got one from on Twitter, Retro Game Brews Podcast at Bots versus Noob, who asks, do you find it's worth owning a physical copy, or is the price too high and you'd rather emulate?
I already own a physical copy, so it's hard to answer.
Yeah, I do too, so I kind of get to skip that question.
I can take this one because I do not own a physical copy of the game.
And you admitted earlier that you emulated
and
it.
I admitted it, exactly. I admitted it. But, well, with the advent of, downloadable titles and the, the Nintendo Online service that's coming for the Switch, I mean, I don't see any reason why it wouldn't be possible for someone to own a copy of the game. Sure, it may not be a physical copy, but it's a copy that you can play on the go.
Right. Now, and two, we just had the Super Nintendo Classic Edition, right? Mm-hmm. Which includes this game, doesn't it? I'm pretty sure it does.
I'm pretty sure it does.
Yeah.
It's a Nintendo property, so it makes sense.
Let me look that up before I say something that's not actually true. Yeah. Yeah, it is on the SNES Mini. As a North American and PAL SNES exclusive, EarthBound. So it's still fairly easy to find this game too. I actually, in anticipating answering this question, I just ran to eBay and Amazon real quick. And on eBay, the top result for EarthBound was $150, so that sets you back a bit. But on Amazon, you could get it used for $19.99, which, if you've never played this game, is a steal. This game is worth a lot more than $20 in my estimation.
I'd say it's worth playing no matter what.
Yeah. Well, there you go, $150. But yeah, I think you could still.
No, if you don't want to pay the $150, then you just emulate, or you get the SNES Mini.
Yeah. And those are like $60, and you can actually find them now too. So evidently. So yeah, I think it's definitely worth playing. Another question. This is from Blue Williams on Twitter at Writer's View, who asked, EarthBound remake, yeah or nah?
I'm gonna have to go with a no on this one. I don't know. I can't see this game being remade, to be honest. It's just so unique, and to put it towards a modern day console, even if they were just updating the graphics, it just wouldn't look right. It would just look it would look really jarring.
Yeah. What about you, Brent?
Well, first, I agree with that. I say no. I don't know how you could do it and not ruin it, or make it not the same in some way that would ruin it.
You mean you guys wouldn't want an edgy anime-styled action RPG remake?
Oh, puke.
No.
A la FF7.
But secondly, I would also say I would almost always, at least in this series, I'd prefer a sequel over a remake, certainly.
Yeah.
Agreed.
But also, I think, here's my idea. They finished developing EarthBound 64, put it on the N64 Classic.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, like they did with Star Fox 2, right? Yeah, that would be a
very
killer app.
You know what I want to see is a Mother collection for the Switch. That would be really cool. That would
be great. Yeah.
Agreed.
Where you could play all 3 games, make it a physical release and make it a big to-do and all that, Nintendo. But I think, we're seeing such a retro revival with so much talk of remasters and remakes and re-releases and collections and compilations, as it should be, because there's some great stuff to discover for the first time, personally, from the past. I'm going to also say nah on this. I think that EarthBound is charming because of its limitations. I think if you tried to upscale it too much, if you try to rewrite too much of it, we always think of remakes and remasters as updating the graphics, and updating the graphics I think would be a mistake with EarthBound.
Definitely.
Yeah. Unless you did it very, very subtly, very similarly. You could already play it in HD on the Super NES Classic, so Hey, that's enough. That's as much touching up as I think it needs. So.
Mm-hmm.
Indeed. One thing to add here. Hey, if anybody from Nintendo is listening to this podcast, Mother Collection, make it happen.
Yes, the Mother Collection, please.
Yeah, everybody wants it.
Yes.
Make it happen.
Yeah, if the ghost of Iwata is listening right now, go and haunt Nintendo until they release that, please. Because that would be astonishing. But we mentioned, Mother, the series. EarthBound in Japan, it was originally known as Mother 2, but they changed it, as we know, to EarthBound to not cause any confusion. You know, it would come out here and people would be like, well, where's Mother 1? Well, it's Japan only. Well, why? And we're still asking why, but why do you guys think, I always wondered this, and I remember reading an answer, but why do you guys think this series is called Mother at all? It's sort of EarthBound kind of makes sense because you're dealing with aliens and Earth and, you know, the planet and all that stuff. But why call the game and its series Mother?
Well, if you look at the cover of the games, of the actual Mother games, the O is always Earth. So you could think that it's Mother Earth.
Mm-hmm.
I was going to say that too, to be honest. I feel like the Mother games themselves have to do with a lot with nature, with a lot with the connotation of Mother Earth, in a sense. Take for example, you're going through the game, you're going to each of the sanctuaries. All these sanctuaries are in pristine natural locations, right? So that's kind of how I look at it as well too. It's like in the sense that this is Mother Earth we're talking about.
Yeah, so,
I also saw a theory online that the game is about Ness fighting his own abortion at the beginning of his life.
Cool. That's,
okay.
That's heavy right there.
That's why the beginning of the Gygas battle is a reflection of yourself. It was actually a really interesting theory that I had never thought about before.
That sounds like a fan theory. It's dark. It's super out there, and it's fascinating. Yeah. that sounds like a fan theory to me. So here's a couple things that I think this is the article that I'd read way back when. One person suggested there's a John Lennon song called Mother. Now, is that true? I haven't listened to too much John Lennon.
Yeah, I think I know there is.
Okay.
I can't remember what album it's on.
Okay.
Plastic Ono Band, maybe?
Okay. And then somebody else here wrote... Itoy himself has commented on this exact thing. So there are multiple reasons for why he calls the series Mother, but the primary one is the series is more motherly than any other game. Most games just say go to the mountain, search the caves in a very commanding, almost uncaring tone, whereas the Mother series is more likely to give you responses like please be careful, remember everyone loves you, and don't stand too close to me, I just farted. Okay. So your
dad also constantly reminds you to take a rest.
Yes. No, it is a very it's almost like okay, so it's sort of something we haven't talked about too much is EarthBound parodies a lot of RPG and video game tropes and cliches and things that happen, right? So perhaps, you know, we talk about games now hand-holding you and sort of babying you through constant tutorials or what have you. But maybe that was a conscious design aspect that they had back then to make it feel like the characters are hand-holding you, even though the game itself doesn't technically. I don't know. My fan theory. But yeah, this just says, so in conclusion, the name primarily comes from the fact that the game is lighthearted and treats you with respect and love as opposed to the mechanically cold feeling you get from other games. So, there you go. Have you guys played the other Mother games?
I've played some of Mother 3.
Okay.
But the computer I was playing it on ended up dying, so I didn't get to finish it.
Okay.
My brother played
and it was kind of mad I didn't play it again yet.
What were you going to say, Ren?
Sorry there, Brent. I interrupted you. No, my brother played both 1 and 3 in its entirety. again through emulation. But he's played 3 several times. He's like, he cannot get over how good 3 is.
Wow.
He's like telling me, Ryan, you have to play it. Go and play it now. I'm like, God, Shane, chill.
That's what I've heard, but Mother 3 introduces the rhythmic battle. I don't know how I feel about that.
Maybe it's one of those things that has to be experienced. Because that doesn't sound up my alley as well. Well, I know that one of our own mages, the Iron Mage, has played these games, all 3 of them. I think he's working through the 3rd one right now. But he's reviewed EarthBound Beginnings or Mother 1, and that's he focuses on proto RPG design and aspects, and I think he wrote a great article for you listening who haven't read it before. I'll leave a link in the description. But so another thing I found out today, just learned about EarthBound, was I guess it had a long development time. 5 years, which maybe by today's standards isn't that long. A game we frequently cite, Final Fantasy 15, had a decade-long development time. Final Fantasy 7, the remake, has apparently an infinite development time.
If we're lucky,
infinite. If we're not lucky, quasi-dimensional. So it'll just never time isn't even a measuring factor. Kingdom Hearts 3, which comes out next year supposedly, that game has what, like a 15-year development period or something ridiculous.
I think 2 was released in 2002. no, 2005. Sorry. So yeah, you're pretty much on the button there.
Yeah, that's bizarre. That's crazy to think of a game being in development that long. So I think that long, maybe 5 years for that time period. But now we're sort of facing, games are bigger, they're more complex, they're more expensive to produce, certainly. You've got all kinds of new technologies being invented and used in video games these days: facial animations, facial mapping, body mapping, motion capture, all that stuff. So it's, I think, to be expected that games take so long to produce now. But do you think that EarthBound is an example of a game that benefited from a long development time? We've sort of talked about how unique and delicately balanced EarthBound is. What do you guys think about that? Long development times and the context of EarthBound?
It's hard to say. I mean, who knows what the game would have been like if it hadn't taken that long. And considering how incredible it is, I feel like 5 years was the exact amount of time that it needed.
Yeah, that's how I feel too. Yeah, I think that, well, we all know what rushed games are like, right?
Yes.
Right? I'm struggling to think of an example of a rushed game, but
I have one. Sonic the Hedgehog, 2006.
Sonic the Hedgehog 2006.
Oh my god, that was so rushed.
Yeah.
It was basically unplayable.
Wow. Yeah.
Would it have been good even if it hadn't been rushed?
That is a very good question. I think
I think that's the answer.
Yeah, hypothetically, right?
I don't know. Wow. That's just the fact that because most Sonic games are rushed, they just look terrible. But on the flip side, if they actually took their time with the games, it's unknown whether or not they would have been good.
Yeah.
No?
That's it's hypothetical, right? So
I think it's the same with EarthBound too. It's like if they rushed it, we would probably have had a different reaction to it than if it was not rushed. Right. It's like the chicken and the egg. What came first?
Right. Okay. Well, in closing, just wanted to ask you guys, what are some similar games to EarthBound after we've talked about how unique and non-cliche it is? What are some similar games to EarthBound that you'd recommend? Let's start with you, Ryan.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Since you didn't have one, I just want to have you on the spot, because when you're on the spot, answers are better.
I think in terms of the humor, in terms of the humor, I'd say Borderlands or Borderlands 2.
Okay.
Just because the writing in both those games is just, the humor is just so spot on. It's so funny, and the characters are also very, very memorable too.
Yeah, that's true. Well, here it comes. What are some games or a game that's similar to EarthBound that you would recommend?
Oh man, that is really hard to say. From the little bit of Mother 3 I've played, I know it's cheating. We already talked about saying the other Mother games, but the other Mother games.
Ah, there you go.
It's not, I'll think of another one too. I guess in terms of it just being a great RPG with a great story for the SNES, I would recommend Final Fantasy 4, 6, Chrono Trigger.
Oh, Chrono Trigger all
Chrono
day,
Trigger.
every day. Have you guys played
Indeed.
Breath of Fire?
Yes.
No, I haven't yet.
Okay. Yeah. Another classic set of RPGs, but definitely EarthBound has a better translation than Breath of Fire 2. Telling you right now. And my recommended game is Undertale. Is that the game you were thinking I was going to say?
Yeah, of
Oh,
course.
okay. Good. Undertale is EarthBound 2.0 so far as I'm concerned. Have you guys played that?
Not yet.
No, but that's why I told you we needed to do the EarthBound episode first.
Right. So, well, here we are. We did it first, and eventually we'll do Undertale, I guess. Undertale is also a very lo-fi kind of a game. Very in the same sense of the visuals of EarthBound. Not too detailed and borderline 8-bit, 16-bit. But a very hilarious game. Very funny game. Instantly, I thought of EarthBound from its dialogue. Its dialogue always is subverting expectations right from the very beginning when you talk to the flower. You guys would really... I know you guys are fans of EarthBound. You would really adore Undertale. It's one of the great games that I played last year.
It's definitely on my must-get list.
Yeah. Now, like Ryan, now. Get off the podcast. Go right now. No, just kidding.
All right, I'm putting down the phones. I'm off. I'm going.
Well, thank you guys for joining me today on this episode. I appreciate it. Again, I know it was last minute, and so thanks very much.
That was a lot of fun. Thank you.
Yeah, no problem. So much fun.
All right.
Thanks again.
Yes, we should definitely do this again. And thank you for listening to another episode. See you next time. I hope you enjoyed that episode of MageCast as much as I did. If so, please follow, subscribe, share, and leave us a review to help us reach a wider audience. If you enjoy our work, please consider supporting us and our vision for the future of gaming conversations through patreon.com/The Well-Read Mage. Special thanks to my Magely colleague, Brent Mead, for sound editing. The MageCast theme song, Post Atmosphere, was composed by fellow mage Russell Gordon and can be found on his YouTube and SoundCloud. This episode may be over, but the legend will live on, passed down by the dwarves, the elves, and the dragons.